One of the most common problems facing early-stage Scrum teams is when the programmers finish on or near the last day of the sprint and then hand their work over to the testers. The testers are left to wonder how they can possibly complete their work in such a short time. Similarly, testers on such teams struggle with what they're supposed to do earlier in the sprint when there's nothing yet to test. Nearly every team goes through a phase where they face these problems. So if you're facing them now, take heart that others have overcome them before you. I want to make 3 suggestions as to how you can resolve this problem. First, get the programmers out of the habit of finishing an entire product backlog item before handing it over to the testers. Handoffs between programmers and testers should be much smaller. Second, make the problem more visible by putting up a new chart in your team room or project homepage if the team is distributed. Third, help the team learn new ways of collaborating through a technique called swarming. I'll talk about each of these approaches, but let's start with number 1, getting the programmers out of the habit of finishing an entire product backlog item before handing it over to the testers. A good Scrum team should be doing a little bit of everything every day. I should be able to walk into your team room any day and see some analysis, some design, some coding, and some testing all happening. To make this a reality, it's important for team members to reduce the size of handoffs. Let's consider the case of a programmer and tester, but this example could just as easily include technical designers, user interface designers, database engineers, or any number of others. If our example programmer and tester are new to Scrum, it's likely that the programmer will grab a product backlog item, finish the whole thing a week or more later, and then hand it over to the tester for testing on the last few days of the sprint. What that programmer should do instead is develop just one small part of the product backlog item, and then hand just that one part to the tester. Consider the case of a simple user story about logging in. As a user, I can log in so that I have access to my data. This user story can have detail added to it in the form of conditions of satisfaction, which are really high-level acceptance tests for a user story. The conditions of satisfaction for our login story may include these: the right credentials grant access, can log in through Facebook, wrong credentials display an error message, can request a password reminder. Our programmer and tester get together and decide where to start. Granting access when the right credentials are entered seems like a good place to start to me. So the programmer goes off and develops only that. While the programmer is coding, the tester is creating test plans, test data, and automated tests. The tester won't be able to run these tests until the programmer says the code is ready. And in some cases, the tester may have a hard time fully automating. But in most cases, for most applications I've encountered, the tester can do a tremendous amount in advance of receiving final code from a programmer. When both the programmer and tester are done, they check their work into the official build system and the tests are run. They then talk about what to work on next. Let's say they choose Facebook integration. Again, while the programmer develops the functionality, the tester creates test plans, data, and automation scripts. There are still handoffs here. There are still moments when the programmer yells out, "It's done, you can run the tests." But the handoffs have been made very small. And between each handoff, both team members are working on their parts of the feature. Sometimes, just describing this way of working is enough for a team to adopt it. Other teams need a bit more of a nudge. So let's look at the second thing I said I like to do to address this problem: put up a new chart. The chart graphs the number of finished product backlog items per day of the sprint. Often the graph will look like this, with the team clearly expecting to finish all of their planned product backlog items in the last 2 days of the sprint. It's not likely. Usually I put a graph like this up without any fanfare. I don't even mention it. I just hang it on the wall near the team's task board or sprint burndown chart. The axes are clearly labeled, so it's not hard for the team to figure out what the chart is showing. If the team doesn't get the hint from me quietly posting and updating this, I will talk to them about it. I'll ask things like, how do you expect to finish 8 product backlog items in 2 days when none have been finished so far? Or, are there ways we can find to work together better so that we can start finishing some user stories earlier in the sprint? One thing you can do to help the team find those better ways to work together is the third suggestion of this video: swarm. Swarming refers to having the entire team working on a single product backlog item at once. For most teams, this is never something I'd suggest permanently, but it can be great as a drill. I like to swim. A common swimming drill is called closed fist swimming. You swim with your hands clenched in fists. This is clearly inefficient, and you'd never want to race this way, but it helps a swimmer learn to feel the water on the rest of their arm, and the swimmer develops a better stroke because of it. Swarming is similar. Not something to do permanently, but great to try during the occasional sprint. When 5 to 9 people work on a single product backlog item, they will be forced to find new ways to collaborate. They'll find ways to split the work into smaller parts, discover new ways to pair, and so on. Applying these 3 suggestions, programmers and testers working together on subsets of a product backlog item, putting up a chart to make the issue visible, and swarming, should help solve the problem of programmers finishing work too late for the testers to fully test it.